Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to just let you know that somewhere around the 32-minute mark, my microphone went really funky. I'm going to just allude it to some frequencies coming in. And so at that mark, you'll notice for about 4.5 minutes, there is a frequency, a pitch. You can still hear the message that's in there. I've tried to change it. We've tried to change it and we're unable to get the frequency out of there. And instead of just losing this whole entire podcast, I made the decision to leave it in there. But I wanted to just let you know before we get into the show that that is what you're going to experience around the 32-minute mark.
What's going on, you beautiful human? You're listening to the Spiritual Show podcast from thespiritualroom.co. This podcast is a space where we blend ancient wisdom with new age teachings around spirituality, awakening, quantum physics, astrology, and more. Join us for weekly episodes where we dive deep into this truth and expand our consciousness as a collective. Hey, what's going on, you beautiful light being? It's your host, Danielle Grant, and I'll be your guide on today's spiritual show. Today on our show, we will be discussing the spiritual awakening journey and understanding the stage that you're in. This is also known as the spiritual ascension journey. So if you know it as the awakening or the ascension, you are in the right place, my friend. This topic is not only for those that are new to the awakening journey, but also for those who have been on this journey for a while. Yes, I'm talking to you. As Buddha described, the journey to enlightenment does not end. Rather, it expands to the greatest potential, and today we are going to be discussing that through the conversation of awakening and understanding that journey on a deeper level. Let's go ahead and roll into today's episode. This podcast is brought to you by The Spiritual Room. The Spiritual Room is a high vibe container helping you awaken, deepen, and expand your knowledge of the spiritual self. The Spiritual Room is your space to feel supported as you awaken to your highest self as we navigate the energies towards the new earth, an earth of higher consciousness. Every month, the Spiritual Room hosts free and paid offerings to support your spiritual awakening and ascension journey. Head to www.thespiritualroom.co to check out what they have going on this month. There are just some things in life that when you come across them, you have this moment of aha, or you're just like, oh, okay, that is what's going on here. That's the topic that we are in today. The topic of the spiritual awakening, the spiritual ascension journey is that kind of conversation, is that kind of aha moment, because you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And you're here to experience being human and to awaken to the understanding that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. And so when you awaken to that information, it's like, holy shit, everything in life just changes. You know, like if you really think about it, understanding that you are not your physical body, are not your physical being, is game changer to your happiness, to your growth, to what you actually get to experience in life. And it's really amazing. And so I'm excited to talk about this today because everyone who's listening to this has had an awakening or isn't an awakening or is on part of the ascension or had something, you're a part of it. And so it's really exciting to be able to talk about this so that you can see what level you're at, so you can understand how to navigate that. And just know that you're on the right path and that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be, even if it seems really difficult and challenging and just like nothing is changing and just it's craziness. Know that you're exactly where you need to be, as well as that seems. And if it's really amazing and life is going awesome for you right now and things are really expanding and aligning and connecting, then amazing. Let's keep doing what you're doing and let's continue to arise and ascend through the spiritual awakening journey that we are on. We should probably start by talking about what is the spiritual awakening and the ascension journey. And it is a natural evolutionary process that involves the process of you shedding the old self and experiencing an inner rebirth, experiencing a rebirth of your frequency and vibration and your reality. And many people speak about spiritual awakening and ascension in terms of this idea of being upgraded or rebooted, or like I just said, your vibration and frequency changing. And all of these things are referring to this inner evolution of yourself and the expansion of your mind, your heart, and your soul. And as the idea, the concept of awakening and ascension implies, it is all about reaching new spaces and states and transcending old limiting habits, beliefs, mindsets, and ways of being. In layman's terms, it basically is saying you're no longer being the person you are today, and you're stepping into being a person that you want to become. And you are shedding everything that old version of you was, from your beliefs, your habits, the way you dress, the way you think, all of that into this completely different reality. Now, spiritual awakening and spiritual ascension is not this like majestical unicorns and roses and rainbows and just like amazing place. It's not really like that. It's actually more often than not accompanied by a massive disruption in your life, and you really having to stop and look at what we've termed and come to know as this dark night of the soul. And I'm going to talk more about that in today's episode, but it's just really uncomfortable actually. And more people need to talk about this or just be in a conversation where people are talking about it, because it's something where your ego mind really struggles, because it thinks that it should be this amazing thing. And it's really challenging, because you're literally shifting from being this old version of you to this new version of you. Everything has to shift, right? Your frequency has to shift, which means your reality has to shift. Your thoughts have to shift. The way you feel has to shift. And by doing that, the quantum field takes hold and your reality shifts. But this spiritual awakening and ascension journey happens to every single one of us. And now more than ever, we are in this spiritual awakening and ascension journey more than we ever have been. And I'm going to open up today's episode just by giving you a little bit more context, or what I've come to know anyways, about what we've experienced in terms of this awakening. So my understanding is back in the early 80s, 1980s, there was a bigger awakening going on on planet Earth of some channelers coming online. We have Abraham Hicks, we have Chiron, we have Wayne Dyer. We have all of these individuals who are physical beings channeling these energetic spiritual entities with wisdom about consciousness and about what is going on in our reality and how to actually play it and how to be this spiritual being having this human experience. And so in the 80s, we had a shift in our consciousness on planet Earth, which means the vibration in which planet Earth was vibrating at shifted to a place where more humans could access this information, because the quantum field was operating at a different speed, at a different state, allowing these higher entities of consciousness to be channeled through these human physical beings. Why am I sharing that with you? In order for that to actually happen, and in order for that to actually be a thing, then the universe had to be vibrating at a certain state so that people could awaken. So there's, in the 80s, a bunch of people that started to turn on their higher consciousness. They became, from whatever reason, their life allowed them to open up to this state, to be a free flow of channel of information for this energy. And that is when we first started this go around of the spiritual awakening and ascension. I'm going to even back it up into the early even 1800s, mid 1800s, moving into the early 1900s. There was a lot of people awaken to this idea of consciousness. And obviously, granted, this has been around forever. Let's talk about Buddha and enlightenment. But these individuals in this time period were people like Alan Watts and Florence Scovel Shinn and Napoleon Hill, and all of these people who were speaking about consciousness and desires and manifestation and abundance and changing your vibration and frequency through changing your thoughts and your emotions. And so these individuals were connected to this level of consciousness as well. And as time went on, more and more people started to awaken to this consciousness or find this information, which allowed them to start to turn on their higher self. Their higher self started to come through more, just like your higher self is coming through more as you listen to this episode. So by that happening in the 1980s, there allowed a shift in consciousness from external sources on planet Earth to actually penetrate more and to give more consciousness, allowing a massive wave of awakening. So you have individuals in the 1980s who are awakening, and from that point moving forward, we've been accelerating our awakening, meaning that the humans on Earth, the consciousness has been, and the information that they're finding, like what I'm talking about, Wayne Dyer and Abraham Hicks and Napoleon Hill and Florence Scovel Shinn and Alan Watts and all these individuals who talk about and work within this idea of quantum, the quantum field, and in spirituality and in understanding a higher understanding. Through that, a lot of people were able to turn on their consciousness. I'm pretty sure I just repeated that. Anyways, so as we've been accelerating now, humans have been awakening at a rapid rate. Again, in the year 2012, there was another large round of people. They call them the waves. Dolores Cannon. I'm giving you guys a lot in today's episode, but Dolores Cannon is someone who talks about the waves of light workers, of starseeds that are going to turn on to support the spiritual awakening, the spiritual ascension onto the new earth, which is exactly what we're in right now, which is why we're talking about today's episode. So in 2012, another round of individuals, of humans, turned on, meaning they tapped into higher conscious states through whatever way, through experience, through reading books, through whatever have them, allow them to understand this information. And then that round of people continued to have the conversation. And this is, as you're probably listening to this, you're recognizing that this is also how society's been changing around this conversation around spirituality. Is more and more people are waking up, which is what we're talking about today. And it's like a wave of things that is happening, and it just gains momentum. And right now on planet Earth, there's a lot of people waking up right now. Like it's happening right now. We are in the Great Awakening. We have been for a while, which is what I'm talking about, since the 1980s. So in 2012, this happened, and another great group of people started to turn on and share more information, and more light workers decided to do the healing, which is why you're seeing this uptick in spirituality and energy and quantum and chakras and healing and Akashic records. And you're seeing it more mainstream now because in 2012, a bunch more people turned on to share this information. Then most recently in 2019, we started to have another shift. And which I'm not going to talk about today's episode, but we will get into here. If you start looking into the astrology and what the astrologers have been talking about, the events that have been happening over this time period, more specifically since 2012, you'll see that things have been expediting at a very quick rate. The rate at which consciousness is turning on and people are awakening is happening really, really quick. And so in 2019, we had another big wave of consciousness. And what happened right after that was, well, we all know what happened in 2020. And when that happened in 2020 and everyone actually turned inward into their home and the world became very quiet, it gave everyone an opportunity to think actually for themselves for once. And what that did is that ignited this massive global awakening and this massive spiritual ascension shift that all of us are actually experiencing right now. That started to happen in 2019. It started to gain momentum in 2012. The world went inwards and everyone started turning on. And I'm not sure what these numbers are, but just to give you an idea, say 100,000 people, they thought at this time, people have been saying in the spiritual community, we're going to turn on us. Say 100,000 people more we're going to turn on in 2019. When 2020 happened, it wasn't 100,000, it was 1 million. And I'm just giving the numbers. I don't actually know if those are the numbers, but that is what has been referenced as actually what turned on. And so what turned on and what I'm talking about is exactly what I just shared, this reboot, this spiritual awakening, the spiritual ascension, the awakening to your spiritual self is what we're experiencing. And this has been going on rapidly since the 1980s. And now here we are. It's quite mainstream. People are awakening. You're listening to this podcast because you want to learn more. You're either starting to awaken or you're already awakened and you're on this journey. But this is really cool if you think about it, because there's no other time that's been like this before. And it's unbelievable if you think about it. So today I'm going to talk about 10 aspects of the spiritual awakening journey. And online you can find many. There's 6, there's 10, there's 23. There's so many, but in reality, there's not that many. It's you awaken to this understanding of your spiritual self and you understand everything that it's about. And in that process, you shed that aspect of you that wasn't that before. And then you become this more energetic, enlightened being. That's ultimately what it is. But today I'm going to break it down into these 10 categories of awakening stages, and you can identify which one you're in for yourself. And I'll also put a link down below the show notes here so that you can access the blog article for today, where I'm going to go ahead and put quite a few resources for you and just put it more in a blog post style. And you can really go in there over time and reevaluate yourself and see where you're at, what part of the journey you're on. Because something that I've come to learn personally through this experience is the awakening and ascension happens over a time period. It's not just like, boom, you're awake and it's all It's like, it's not like that. It happens over a time period, and certain stages you stay in for longer time periods of your life. And so you want to come back to this and be like, hey, where am I now in this journey? Because that's what it is. It's a journey, and you're awakening to it, or you've already awakened to it and you're on it, but you're still on this journey. So it's of your best interest as this human who's in charge of all this to keep yourself in the loop and like remind yourself what is going on, and remind yourself what these journeys and what these aspects and these phases look like, because it makes it a lot easier to navigate it for your human self, for your ego mind, if you can show it like, hey, this is what you're experiencing right now and it's okay, because then it's a lot easier to move forward. So let's go ahead and dive into these 10 spiritual awakening ascension symptoms that you might be experiencing right now. So like I was discussing, the spiritual awakening refers to a shift in consciousness and a perception of your reality. It's an understanding and a recognition of oneness with all existence, all that is good, and all that is perceived to be bad. That is what the spiritual awakening is. So it's a complete shift in what you have come to know to be true, and that shift allows you to access your higher state, your conscious state. As I mentioned, this is not an overnight process. This is something that happens over time, and so you are going to be in this stage at different times. And again, this is every single human on this earth goes through this. We all experience it in our own way, the way that we're supposed to, but there isn't anyone who is immune to this. And you've most likely actually been on your awakening and ascension journey for some time now. You just actually weren't aware of it. And awareness is so key when we talk about anything on the spiritual side. But you might be in a place right now where you're experiencing a lot of negativity in your life. And I want you to know that that's okay. And you're most likely in an aspect of your spiritual awakening journey. And that's why you're experiencing this. And maybe you just forgot that that's what you're in right now. And that should be able to ease a little bit of the stress that you might be experiencing right now. The whole point of this process from a higher perspective, from a spiritual perspective, is to free you from the matrix that we live within. We've all come to awaken, if you're listening to this podcast, to this understanding that we've lived within a matrix of this third dimensional reality, this lower level reality that's been bound by hate and greed and politics, and it's very distorted, and it's been here for a very long time. And so we are currently freeing ourselves. Like I said, it's been a process, an awakening, that we don't have to live like this, that life, there's more to this because it's a spiritual thing. And so ultimately, when you're on the spiritual awakening and ascension journey, it's you becoming free from the matrix that we're in. And if you've seen the movie The Matrix, you know what I'm talking about. There's two different, you take the red pill or the blue pill. One pill offers you a completely restricted, suppressed reality, and the other one is what you desire it to be. And it's in this more controlled, contrived reality. And so with the spiritual awakening ascension journey, it's all about you awakening to that matrix and awakening to what's beyond that matrix, which is source, infinite intelligence. And the first stage of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that you have all of a sudden a desire to help others, or you have a desire to be of a higher service to somebody. All of a sudden, maybe you find yourself offering to hold a door for more people, or maybe you find yourself really wanting to help that person that you work with excel, or maybe you find yourself wanting to go and start a new business, or maybe you want to create a new membership or community for your business. But ultimately, you have this desire to be of service to others. Now, I want to remind you that this is a process. And so if you actually think about this being a process, this could have happened to you when you were at a young age. You could all of a sudden have this internal desire to want to be something when you're older that is someone of service and someone that inspires you. And that's my own personal experience that I'm going to share more in today's episode. But it's really about this desire of wanting to be a better person and to really help with humanity and to live in a more helpful and grateful state than in this negative and really distorted reality that a lot of us live within. And so you might find yourself in this place, or even if you think back to when you might have first started turning on, that was the first part of the stage in the journey, is that you've all of a sudden wanted to create more or be better in society and to be of service. And the other thing too is you probably found yourself not really attracted to negative experiences or people that didn't have nice things to say or gossip. You might have found yourself pushing away from that. Again, if you move into your younger years in your 20s and 30s, you might have found yourself moving away from friendships that were very low level, friendships that weren't high vibrational and that were just, they didn't offer much to your life. So that is also the beginning stage of the spiritual awakening journey, is feeling a lot of, I want to change my reality. Again, you're awakening to something, and all of a sudden there's this shift that happens, or you're looking at things through a different lens. You're like, wait a minute here, this isn't what I want. The second stage of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that you starting to feel more comfortable being your most authentic self. And you really have this internal desire to live your truth as your spiritual essence. And so you'll find yourself in a state where you really don't want to continue doing those old behaviors. Maybe it's being bad with money. Maybe it's lying to yourself. Maybe it's lying to others. Maybe it's holding on to things that you know you shouldn't hold on to, but you all of a sudden are starting to feel like you can forgive people. You can feel like you have this inner calling to be more and to show up more as this better version of yourself. And there's always this aspect of us inside that wants to be this higher version. We've always heard it. We've always had this thing with these desires to be a certain way. And it's sometimes we can't achieve those things, but we've always heard them. Those are the things on stage 2 of this, where you're really starting to say, I want to be more of who I really am. And maybe that's even changing the way you dress, not even caring what you wear when you go out in public. That's a big part of it too. And again, this could start when you're a younger child or in your mid adults, but you really have this desire to be more of an authentic person in your life. And the other thing I should say is this journey could also happen very quickly. Like you could turn on and within 1 year, all of these kind of things start to happen in your life and they blend together really quick and they're all happening. That's completely normal too. But again, thinking about it, for some people, this has been going on a really long time and they just haven't been aware to it. For other people, when they turn on, it just gets to be really quick. If there's no right or wrong way, that's just the journey that that individual is on. The third stage in the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is you all of a sudden have an awareness of reality that goes beyond the physical sense. You start to maybe look into manifestation or law of attraction. You start to see synchronicities in your life, and you just really start to see that there's this external force in reality that's actually serving you and helping you. And that begins to turn on. You might find yourself reading Abraham Hicks books or listening to things on manifestation, or found yourself watching The Secret even. All of a sudden, you have an awareness of these things that are going on outside of you. Maybe you turn onto your chakra system, but things really you start to become aware that there is this quantum field. There is this external source that is helping facilitate your life, whether it's positive or negative. This one I think is personally really cool because think about your own journey. When did you start turning on to reading certain books or reading certain things or listening to certain things, or your mind became curious? That was this stage, the stage of really realizing that, wait a minute here, there's more than just being a physical being and everything is energy vibrating around me and my thoughts create my reality. What did that look like for you? Reflect back on that for yourself right now. The fourth stage in the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that your physical body is no longer tolerant of things it once was, as new spiritual realizations are integrated. This one is, I personally have had crazy experiences with my physical body and my spiritual awakening and ascension journey. And as I have moved into higher densities, my physical body seems to absorb them in a very high impact way, and my physical body basically shuts down. And this most recent one, which I will share on a blog post or something in the future, was my light body turning on through my chakra system, and I basically was bedridden. I couldn't do anything but listen to something for about 3 months. And this is one that happens to all of us. And this is one where we talk about it. It's not a rosy, sunny, fun journey. Because when your physical body undergoes a transformation, you feel it, you see it, because it is a real part of your reality. And so you will find that things you either used to eat, you can't eat anymore. You'll find yourself craving more vegetables and fruits and water and just really fresh things, really high energy producing fruit or food, really. But it's really, your body changes, your energy field can change. And so when that happens, and understanding we have a chakra system, we have an energetic body, that has to undergo some sort of transformation. Your physical body all of a sudden will manifest with ailments, with your back being in pain, your body being in pain. And so this one is a real serious part. I shouldn't say serious, but this is a real physical aspect of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey that every single person will experience. And it's really important to just remember that when you go through these sometimes is we oftentimes want to be like, oh, something's wrong with me because I'm a human. But more often than not, it's part of your actual journey. And it's actually trying to show you something that you need to heal within yourself. But that's a conversation for another day. But that is stage 4 of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey. Stage number 5 of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that your physical senses are picking up on the new things and indicate a heightened perception. This one is when you start to experience more of your consciousness. You start to really befriend that aspect of you and to turn it on and to have that higher vibrational version of you flowing through your physical being. And that could look like your intuition is heightened. You're really starting to hear that inner dialogue, that inner version of you. You might see that things around you, the synchronization, maybe you're seeing repeating numbers, but really your physical senses are starting to indicate something is changing. I'm starting to feel things differently. I'm starting to experience my physical life differently. And what is really going on? And so that is when this one specifically is when you really start to make a shift, because now you're turning on. Now that old level of you that you've shed is allowing this version of you to flow through. And this is when things get fun, because this is when your manifestations really start working. This is when things really start changing in your life for you. And so stage number 5 of your physical senses, picking up on new things, your intuition is heightened, and just you feel like the world is different. This is a really exciting time. But again, it can also seem really intense because it can seem like you have no control or that it's brand new. And so your ego's freaking out. And so you have to be aware of that. The 6th stage in spiritual awakening and ascension is you're experiencing short-term memory loss of identity, your feelings of inner turmoil, and feelings of being just outside of your body. Again, you're kind of feeling like, I don't know what this reality looks like. I've never been here before. I've never lived here before. I'm seeing things differently. I'm hearing this internal chatter more. And it's kind of this like point where you've opened up the closet and you realize that you have a ghost friend in there, and then you close the door and you're like, no, I don't want to see it. And then you open it again and you're like, oh, there it is. I see it again. And then you close it. You know what I mean? It's about you becoming more comfortable in this new human body, this new energetic body that you offered yourself. And so you do have a loss of identity. You don't know who you are. You're living more authentic. You're not wanting to be around the negative conversation. You're feeling the energies in your life a little bit more. You're seeing things synchronize, so you truly don't really know who you are anymore. And that confuses your physical body, your ego mind. Number 7 in the spiritual awakening and ascension is that you experience a sudden change or disappearance of habits, friends, social circles, daily activities, your career changes, or overall everything in your life starts to change. This one, again, if you think about this all being a journey, which stage are you in, happens over time. This one happened for me a little bit later on in my corporate world, where all of a sudden I was let go from a job, and the very next day I was like, I'm doing this thing that I have inside of me. I'm becoming an entrepreneur. I'm owning my own business, and I'm going to manifest it, and I'm going to speak it into my life, and I'm going to become it, and I'm going to do it. And that's when it shifted for me. So if you think about it, that's stage 7 of this journey that we're in. That this has been going on for like years in my life before I finally got to this stage. So where are you at in this journey? But what happens is you experience all of a sudden, like for me, my habits changed. I was going to the gym before I wasn't going to the gym, right? We talk about the physical body changing its habits. Well, that was what happened to me. I started to figure out how to get healthier, how to have a different routine for myself. My social circle started changing. I moved back to my hometown. I became very quiet, and I only talked to the people that truly wanted to engage with me. The daily activities in my life changed. I was becoming an entrepreneur. I was leveraging meditation. I was having to focus on my health and fitness. My career changed. I lived a 10-year corporate experience to become an entrepreneur. And everything in my life shifted in that moment. And so this one really, you have all of a sudden things change, and they start to change quick. And it's because that higher level of consciousness is flowing through you. So in stage 7 of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey, things change, shit changes. And it can be really intimidating because you're like, you can feel really alone all of a sudden. You can feel like No one understands what you're going through. No one can know why you did it. And it can be really stressful at times. But again, remembering that it's part of the process and the journey, and how can I best navigate it, and how can I be mindful of this, and how can I lean into this because it's part of the journey that I'm experiencing. Stage number 8 in the spiritual awakening and ascension is that you might experience some sort of anxiety or panic or depression or discord or just loneliness, a lot of isolation. This again is you becoming this new version of you. This is you getting comfortable in your own skin. This is you stepping into that version of you that's higher, that's here to experience it, that you've awoken to. But that can also seem like very intense and limited, and like it doesn't know what this new space is or this new place is, because the ego is still rooted in this human reality. It's basically what's happened now is finally your consciousness is ahead of your ego. And that's exactly what the spiritual awakening journey is about, is getting you out ahead of your human experience and getting you detached from that. And so number 8, stage 8 is a really important part, because this offers you the true shift in shit, this human aspect, this ego has no idea what this reality is that I'm in right now. And it's freaking the fuck out. Okay, this is good. I've done good work. I'm shifting. It can seem really scary, but it shouldn't. You should lean into that place because it's the stage that you have to go through. Stage number 9 is in the spiritual awakening and ascension journey is that you're experiencing vivid or increased lucid dreaming and or increased intuition. So now things are really starting to come together. You're hearing ideas in your mind throughout the day. You're having dreams that are really healthy, that are projecting your future. You're seeing solutions to your problems. You're seeing yourself have more of these vivid dreams, like I talked about, or these lucid dreams even. You might find yourself even having out-of-body experiences. During this portion for me, I started to experience myself in different dimensions when I was sleeping. And at first it kind of freaked me out, but then I was like, oh, wait a minute here. This is me really experiencing it. Like, this is really me experiencing the spiritual aspect of me while I'm still in this physical experience. And so you'll find yourself in these different places. You'll find yourself hearing more of that intuitive self. And again, now your old self is kind of settled in here now and said, okay, there's a new aspect here. And so that aspect is your consciousness, and that consciousness is delivering more information to you through your intuition, through your dream state. And that is, again, showing you that you've shifted from that 3D self, that lower vibrational self, into that more 4D, 5D aspect that we're all here to experience. We're all here to experiencing the shift and awakening. The last one here, number 10 of the stages of spiritual awakening ascension, is you open up to the realization that you're a creator, that you are source energy, and that you are here to experience this, that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and you are here to experience all of this. And if you want to truly maximize this and to step into this awakening and to continue to ascend and awaken through this, then be real with yourself and where are you at, and realize that it's up to you to learn the information and to invest in the things that will help you get these practices, that will help you actually allow your higher self to flow through you, because it can't just flow through you. It can only, this spiritual aspect of you can only be maximized and be at its optimum when you allow it to, and you have to get it ready, right? It's like allowing a race car onto a track. You don't just put a shitty car on the race car and expect for optimal performance. You put a nice, well-machined, lubricated, maintained vehicle on the racetrack so that it can have the best possible outcome, so that it can have the best experience. It's the same for your spiritual being. You want to get it ready. You want to do what you need to do. You want to look at what you need to heal. You want to engage in spiritual activities. You want to leverage the energies that we have. You want to continue awakening to this information. This podcast is one of them. We're going to continue to enlighten you on this. That's allowing you to create and build this beautiful car so that when your consciousness gets in it, it can rip, it can roll. And it can only do that by you saying, I'm in this experience. What do I need to do? What do I need to look at? And be aware of where you're at and how you support yourself each of the stages. And as you go through this podcast, you'll find where there's going to be lots of opportunity for you to learn how to support yourself as you are on the spiritual ascension journey. And identify yourself where you're at. So right now, what stage are you in? Are you in stage 1? All of a sudden, the world better place. Are you stage number 2, where you're wanting more authentic to yourself, and you just wanting to have a better life? Number 3, you have awareness that there's things going on around differently. 4, is your physical body telling you that it's trying to make changes? Number 5, are your senses beginning to pick up on the things that are happening around you and for you? This higher source, this infinite intelligence. Number 6, are you experiencing a shift? Are you having these feelings of inner healing that you need to do? Are you feeling like you're outside your body? Are you losing your identity a bit? Number 7, are you experiencing a sudden change? Are your habits changing, your friends changing, your career, is everything in life changing? Number 8, are you experiencing an anxiety attack? Are you experiencing a shift in your identity from your ego self, your low-level self, to your more higher 540 self? Number 9, are you experiencing more of your higher self through vivid and lucid dreaming or an increased intuition? Is that higher self really starting to channel through? And the last one, number 10, is are you really starting to realize that you are the creator? You are source energy. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. Which stage are you in? And one of the best ways to support your spiritual awakening journey is to ground yourself in mindfulness. Mindfulness is your awareness for the present moment. This is a state that allows your awakening to continue to happen on your highest possible time frame. And if you want to learn more about mindfulness, how to incorporate it into your life, check out our latest class at the Spiritual Room. It's called the Mindfulness Playbook class, and it can help you to learn more about mindfulness, and more importantly, it will help you incorporate a mindfulness routine into your life so that it can continue to support your actual awakening and ascension journey. So you can go ahead and click the link down below and you can learn more about that. But I want to wrap up today's episode because I don't want to keep this too much longer. And I know I said I was going to share a little bit about my own personal experience, but I'll save that for another episode. But I want to just close this out by letting you know that there are 3 ways that you can support your spiritual awakening. Like I just talked about, one of them is mindfulness. But the 3 other ways is, the first one is you can surrender. You can surrender to the fact that this is happening and you are awakening and it's a natural part of the evolution. And what a freaking time to be alive that we're actually here right now experiencing this. This is not like an everyday thing. This is like a never happened before on planet Earth, and we're here to support this transformation. So surrendering to that experience allows some of the harder parts and stages of the awakening and ascension process to become a lot easier. And we'll talk more about surrender on this podcast. The second one is to live in your heart more. As you awaken to this, you're going to learn more about the chakra system and our heart center and how it's the true connector in our life. And so if you can live with more gratitude and more love and more peace and space for others, then you will find that this journey becomes greater and actually moves quicker, and you can align a lot faster if you can live from that space. And the last one is to detach from the mind. And that's that human level, that ego level. And we can sometimes get stuck in the spiritual journey between that place of actually letting go of that old version of us and moving into that higher level version of us. That's something that a lot of people do experience, and you kind of get trapped there a little bit. And that's all about detaching from the mind. And you need to understand what belongs in the ego and what belongs to the consciousness and what lives in the subconscious, and how you can move beyond that, and how you can create a meditation practice that allows you to detach from your mind and train your mind to do that, which is what we talk about in the Mindfulness Playbook class. Just know that it's a journey, and it's a wild ride. It's a roller coaster, but you're here to experience it, and you're in the right place. At the Spiritual Room, we talk about this stuff all the time to support this journey and how you can navigate it, and awareness is the most important part. And I'm just really grateful that we were able to connect on today's podcast about this, because I'm really passionate about helping you understand this journey. And I've been blessed with a awakening journey that has been very full of experience, but because of that, it's allowed me to really become a philosopher of spirituality and to understand it and to be able to share it with you, the listener, and the person who is part of our community at the Spiritual Room. And so many other people are going to be able to share stuff on this podcast too, but it's really about helping you navigate this journey, because it can be really confusing at times. And no matter what stage you're in, or you're just awakening, or you've been decades awakened to yourself, and it's always a journey for as long as you're part of this human experience. And the more that we can remind ourselves of that, and the more that we can support ourselves through that journey, the easier it will be on our human self. We can kind of hack it a little bit. Not that I like that word, but that's what this is all about. So before I end this episode, I was just on Pinterest reading some stuff, and I just wanted to read you guys a couple things that I found, because I just think that they'll resonate with you. So I'm going to read them. This one here is awakening. You reach a point where you feel yourself going through an awakening. You look at what you used to do and who you used to be. It hurts because you realize you believed in and promoted nonsense. You grow, you evolve, and you stop because you are no longer operating at that frequency. As a result, there's certain people that you have to walk away from. As a result, you start to realize just how messed up the world is. You want to help, you want to heal, you want to make it a better world. This is how you know you're awakening a higher level of consciousness. That was by Sylvester McNutt. And, okay, this one's good too. You think of yourself as humans searching for a spiritual awakening, when in fact you are spiritual beings attempting to cope with a human awakening. Seeing yourselves from the perspective of the spirit within will help you to remember why you came here and what you came here to do. And one last one. The final awakening is the embracing of the darkness into the light. That means embracing all our humanity as well as our divinity. What we go from is being born into our humanity, sleepwalking for a long time until we awaken and start to taste our divinity, and then we want to finally get free. We see as long as we grab at our divinity and push away our humanity, we aren't free. If you want to be free, you can't push away anything. You have to embrace it all. It's all God. Ram Dass. Thank you for joining me in today's podcast episode. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Wherever you can make a comment around here, let me know what part of the spiritual awakening and ascension journey are you in right now, and what ahas did you have today, and anything that you want to share really, and how you might be experiencing it. And don't forget to join us on our next episode, where we're going to be talking about the great solar flash, when it may occur, and what it will look like. If this is new to you, I think you're really going to be down for this episode. And if this is not new to you, I'd love to know what your perspective is on it as well. Don't forget to register for our weekly spiritual communication email. You can register for that at thespiritualroom.co, or you can check out the links and resources we have in today's show notes, which is the link down below. That's all for today, beautiful human. I will see you in the next episode.